بھڑکتے ہوئے ہر سمت دھواں ہے، زینب پہ مصیبت ہے، قیامت کا سما ہے، کہتی ہے محافظ میرے پردے کا کہاں ہے، ہم غیرت حیدر میری چادر کو بچا لے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، پھر غیظ ید اللہ زمانے کو دکھاؤ، فریاد چہیتی کی ہے امداد کو آؤ، گوہر نہ چھینے آ کے بھتیجی کو بچاؤ، دامن سے سکینہ کے ہیں لپٹے ہوئے شعلے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، تم آؤ تو پھر ظلم کی طاقت نہ رہے گی، تم آؤ تو زینب کی ردا چھن نہ سکے گی، تم آؤ تو بیمار کی مسند نہ جلے گی، تم آؤ تو بیمار پہ برسیں گے نہ کوڑے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، برچھی کی انی پر ہے ابھی تک دل اکبر، اور باپ کی آغوش میں کملا گئے اصغر، شبیر کی گردن پہ چلا شمر کا خنجر، اب عابد بیمار بھی شعلوں میں گھرا ہے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، جلتی ہوئی ریتی پہ پڑے ہیں تن بے سر، یہ اون محمد ہے وہ قاسم ہے وہ اکبر، پھر ایک نئے ظلم پہ تیار ہے لشکر، پامالی شبیر کے ہوتے ہیں ارادے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، محمد پہ قیامت کی گھڑی ہے، کیا وارث تطہیر پہ افتاد پڑی ہے، یہ دختر زہرا ہے جو بلوے میں کھڑی ہے، بیمار سنبھلتا نہیں کوڑے ہیں برستے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے، عباس اٹھو آگ لگی جلتے ہیں خیمے۔ فاتحہ۔
آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، اب آ جاؤ سکینہ، دانوں کی صدا تھی کہ نہ تڑ پاؤ سکینہ، آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، اب مجھ سے جدائی کا علم اٹھ نہ سکے گا، اب مجھ سے جدائی کا علم اٹھ نہ سکے گا، یوں روٹھ کے مادر سے نہ تم جاؤ سکینہ، آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، پھر پیار سے ماں کہے کہ پکارو میری دلبر، پھر پیار سے ماں کہے کہ پکارو میری دلبر، اماں کو نہ اس طرح سے تڑ پاؤ سکینہ، آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، اصغر کی جدائی علی اکبر کی جدائی، اصغر کی جدائی علی اکبر کی جدائی، کافی ہے نا اب تم مجھے رلواؤ سکینہ، آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، کیا مجھ سے خطا ہو گئی کیوں روٹھ گئی ہو، کیا مجھ سے خطا ہو گئی کیوں روٹھ گئی ہو، اس غم زدہ مادر کو یہ بتلاؤ سکینہ، آ جاؤ اب آ جاؤ، یہ سچ ہے بہت قید میں دکھ تم نے اٹھائے، یہ سچ ہے بہت قید میں دکھ تم نے اٹھائے، سو باپ کی آغوش میں سو جاؤ سکینہ، आ जाओ अब आ जाओ। कानों से लहू बहता है, रुख सार है नीले। कानों से लहू बहता है, रुख सार है नीले। ये शक्ल ना अब्बास को दिखलाओ सकीना, आ जाओ अब आ जाओ। लिपटा के कलेजे से दुआएं मेरी कहना, लिपटा के कलेजे से दुआएं मेरी कहना। एक नन्ही सी मैयत जो कहीं पाओ सकीना, आ जाओ अब आ जाओ। अब आ जाओ सकीना, बानों की सदा थी कि न तड़ पाओ सकीना, आ जाओ अब आ जाओ। सलवात।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight, we are at the 12th night of this Ashra at Razavi Community Center. Tonight is the final program of this Ashra at this center. Inshallah, programs will continue throughout the month and we'll be announcing those in our newswires for the 10th, 20th of Imam Hussain and the other, inshallah, Shahadat and events throughout the month until the end of Muharram, Safar, and until Rabiul Awwal, inshallah. First of all, I'd like to thank Sheikh Muhammad Reza Himyari for coming from Streamwood, Illinois, all the way away from his family and sharing his pearls of wisdom with us. I'll request at the end of the announcement with our chairman Muhammad Mauladina to thank Sheikh also. Also, the ladies program concluded today. That was the last program for ladies also. For donations, I would like to thank anyone who has donated for the cause of Imam Hussain salam and at this center. The programs will continue as I mentioned throughout the month, so you can still donate whatever you can for the upcoming programs, and inshallah the contribution will be rewarded. As I mentioned, donation desk is towards the right of the exit door. Check, cash, credit card, whatever works for you, debit card. We have all the options available. Calendars are available. These are for the Islamic Hijrah, $3 for one, and you can get two for $5. So if you want those, they are on the front desk. And with that, I will request our chairman Muhammad Mauladina to come and say the note of thank to for the Sheikh. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad Salawat.
Respected Sheikh Muhammad Reza Hamiari, respected Zakira Nargis Karim, my respected elders, brothers and sisters, my youngsters, Assalamu alaikum. Can't believe it, 12 days ago, looks like it was just a day ago that we introduced the Sheikh here and welcomed him to our community, and it's already time for him to depart again. So the 12 days went by so fast. As you are all aware, these activities take a lot from a lot of people. But first, I would like to thank all the people who attended the programs and made it success for us throughout the 12 days. I mean, these have been record crowds that we've had, the past 12 days. Alhamdulillah, so the programs went really well. I would like to thank all the reciters who recited through all the marshiyas, the nawhas, the duas, um, and you know what, the list goes on and on. I'd like to thank all the donors who donated generously towards our Muharram fund, and like to thank in advance to the ones who will be making donations coming up. Um, the donations were made monetarily by sponsoring niyazes and tabarruk. Many people brought made the niyaz from home and brought it over and packed it in. I apologize for the way we've handled it because with the pandemic, we had some restrictions about putting masks on and everything, protocols in place. As you know, Muharram month, many people come to the centers, and throughout all four centers, we had that made that mask mandatory, and the food to be taken away from here. So, thank you for understanding. I really appreciate everybody following the protocol and cooperating with us. Your support means a lot to us, and if you can continue supporting us in donations or whatever, in any form you can, I mean, this is what makes our community successful, and we can do excellent programs and upcoming programs. We can bring different speakers as well, so this helps us a lot. Couple of individuals I like to thank. One is Brother Murtaza Maulidina, who always bringing the sheikh on time to the center. That was his duty at night to bring him down here. I'd like to thank our assistant chair, Brother Husnain Maulidina, who picked up the sheikh from the airport, and he was picking up the students from McMaster, bringing them here, and then taking them back. He made several trips back and forth, and many times at night he would drop the sheikh off again, and many other things that he's been doing around the center as well. So, here's my big thanks to our volunteers. Our volunteers are the backbone of our community. I mean, without them, nothing happens here. We may look good here, as committee members and that, but these are the true workers, and they are the backbone of our community. So it's a long list of volunteers, both on the ladies' side and the men's side, and I don't want to start taking names because I may forget somebody, and I will never forgive myself for for missing somebody out. So you all know who these volunteers are. You see them night after night after night, and the ladies, you see them. You see in the gents here, the guys are always running back and forth from the kitchen, and they serve everyone with a smile on their face. And you know what? I think we have fantastic volunteers in this center. They cooperate with everyone. We never have to tell them what to do. They just do things on their own, and we don't need to micromanage our volunteers. Right from the kitchen staff, the ladies who have been handling the kitchen most of the times. Without them, we'd be starving. We wouldn't be going home on a full stomach, right? So, um, you gotta admit, our volunteers are the best, and I'm so proud to be working with such volunteers. It's a privilege and an honor working with these volunteers. So if you agree with me, please have a loud salawat for our volunteers. Sheikh, looks like I'm going to take your time for the lecture today. So these guys always stay behind, clean the centers and everything. So you know what? I'm telling you, I'm so privileged working with these guys. I'd like to thank the AV team. They've been great. Our sound system is working well. Our video, our streaming and everything was working well. I'm sure a lot of people are sitting at home watching live stream from here. So thank you, our AV team. And many of them are volunteers who work outside, but they do double duties in here. So it's great to see these guys doing that kind of work. And we encourage a lot of youngsters. I know they've been coming up and offering their help at night after night. So I encourage those volunteers, come up, join our volunteer team, because trust me, a lot of these volunteers are getting up there in age, like myself, and Hassan Bhai and all these guys, Amir Bhai, we're all getting up there in age. it's you guys who's going to have to start taking over things, right, in the future. So I encourage you youngsters to start participating into our programs, into our volunteering, and that. Uh, I thank you all for helping out at night. You come and offer your services to us. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Um, so I'd like to thank our committee members too. We have Brother Asnan Mauladin, our chairman, our Muki, Syed Amir Bhai, Rizwi, our chair lady, Sister Azra Rahim, our secretary, Sister Bashira Walji, our treasurer, Dr. Mohammed Panju. These guys have been doing a great job. Appreciate all the work you guys put into this center. Without you guys, couldn't do these things, right? Center wouldn't run right. Also, I'd like to thank Sister Noshina Panju for hosting our Zakira when she came here for the 12 days. Mashallah, the lectures were really good by both of you, the Sheikh Hemyari and Sister Nargis Karim. Got great reports from the ladies' side that the lectures were very good, enlightening, and same thing here. I've heard the same thing on the men's side. In the evenings, the lectures have been very enlightening. May Allah actually prolong your life, give you good health so you can continue this and finish your education, your PhD that you are working on. Allahumma salli ala. So my last thanks goes to our Muki, our program director. You know what? We may think it's easy job, but it's a very tough job being a Muki because they arrange for speakers, they arrange for timing, all the reciters, and it's on and on. Sending out emails and So Amir Bhai, on behalf of everybody, we thank you for doing a great job for us. We really appreciate. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He always made sure the program started on time and ended on time, and it's a great job done. Thank you, really appreciate it. So I'll just encourage everybody to keep participating in our programs. Alhamdulillah, I see a lot of new faces there in our center now. Many people have moved here. If you haven't given us your email address, please give us your email address so we can keep you appraised of the upcoming programs through the week. We send a weekly flyer. We encourage you to come up for Shabe Juma programs. We have every Thursday night. Juma programs on Fridays. All the Shahadats, Wiladats, we do all of them. And we also have a bi-weekly session with our resident alim, Maulana Sayyid Sagir Hussain. So I encourage you all to please participate in, and that way encourages us to do more and more into the center. So once again, I thank you all. Thank you all for participating. And if I've missed anybody, in thanking, forgive my shortcomings. And also I forgive our shortcoming Sheikh and our Zakira if there's things we haven't been able to do, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll see you again in the future. So all the best to you. Thank you, everyone. And with your loud salawat, I'll ask the Sheikh to come up and start his lecture. Thank you. Ali Muhammad salawat.
Please come towards the member. That will we have more people space at the back for the people coming late.
الفاتحة. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولقد أنزلنا إليكم آيات مبينات ومثلا من الذين خلوا من قبلكم وموعظة للمتقين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is truly an honor and a blessing to be amongst all of you in whatever community go to, so long as the community is dedicated and that majlis, that occasion, is dedicated to one of the Ahlul Bayt. It is really an honor and a blessing to be a part of that. And so I must thank you all for allowing me this privilege of being in your midst and sharing these few nights with you. It's a thing that I don't take lightly by any means. And so I thank you and thank the entire community, not just this community, but the other communities in the Hamilton area as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In these past few nights that we have been together, we've been thinking about, reflecting on the lessons that we can draw, the aspirations and the inspirations we can draw from the events of Karbala. And we said that on one level, the inspiration is personal and individual. This idea of taqwa that is at the heart of the teachings of the Prophet of Islam. This taqwa that is represented in the beautifying of one's character. It's a virtue that we must cultivate in our own individual souls. So we said that that taqwa must be manifested in the relationships that we carry, those relationships that we strengthen in our lives, relationships with our families and with our communities. And so the legacy and the teachings of Karbala include, on one level, the individual, on another level, the social. At the end of the day, there was a community that Imam Hussein was preaching to. And this community was suffering on a social level. And as well, we talked somewhat about the political difficulties that the Imam faced, and the political solutions that we can draw from the words and the deeds of Imam Hussein. But we said that's the highest level, that level that the Prophet of Islam himself refers to in terms of what we can draw, that inspiration that we can draw from Ashura and the person of Imam Hussein goes far beyond any of these. And that is that the soul of Imam Hussein is united with the soul of Rasulullah himself, صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. In mentioning this hadith and repeating it for the past few nights, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. These are the words of Rasulullah. Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Ahabba Allahu man ahabba Husayna. So the inspiration that we can draw from the story of Karbala is an inspiration about love. A story about how we can become devoted to Imam Hussein. For if we can make that connection with Imam Hussein, then we have made that connection with Allah. Ultimately, the highest inspiration that we can draw is ultimately a connection with Allah. We are like those moths that circle the candle. And we must give ourselves and all of our being, not just our physical souls, physical bodies, not just our communities and our societies. All of this must be moving back towards Allah. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Whether we realize it or not, we are on this path. We are on this journey back towards Allah. So the inspiration that we get from Imam Hussein is an inspiration that goes beyond a particular time or a particular place. It's an inspiration that every single year that we come to, we will draw something new from it. This might seem a bit strange to us, but when we look at the life of a ma'asum, at every single episode of that life, there is something that we can benefit from it. And every time we remember and we remind ourselves of that episode, we will draw something else. This depends not only on our physical circumstances, but it depends as well on the receptivity of our soul. How much we have worked on our soul. What state we find our soul in. A ma'asum is that connection to Allah. He's the perfection of a human being. And he draws his inspiration from Allah directly. That is why he has reached that status of perfection. And so at any point in our life, throughout history, whenever we remind ourselves of the story of Karbala, we can always draw some inspiration. We can always reconnect ourselves to Allah. This is why when we think about the life of the Prophet of Islam, he becomes an exemplar for us. Just to give an example, how is it possible that for hundreds and hundreds of years, generation after generation, people will think about and reflect on Karbala? This is not something particular, and it shouldn't be surprising. Just a very common example. When people look at a portrait, at a picture or a drawing, you will look at that drawing and you will draw something from it. You will draw some sort of meaning or some idea from it. And then you might go back to that same drawing, maybe even years later. And you will look at the same painting and you might see something else. At one time you may have focused on the big picture, and then after years of contemplating and thinking about this painting, you might look at the brush strokes. You might look at the contrast between the different colors. You might look at the perspective or the shading. And the deeper and deeper you think about it, the more you study the history of art, you will draw actually more from that same painting. This is why artwork is so everlasting. It never runs out. People will pay great sums of money to be able to acquire these paintings. And this isn't just about paintings. Any form of literature or any form of art really has this quality. Whenever you read a book that maybe you draw inspiration from, every time you look back at that book, you will draw something new. Almost as though it's the first time you're reading it. if it's truly a masterpiece, highest level of art and human production, you will be able to have something new that you can draw from it. So this isn't something that is very surprising to us. We experience this on a daily level. But when we talk about the highest potential that any human being could reach, and that is the connection, a perfect connection with Allah, then think about every single generation that comes. They will reflect. And every single person that comes to these majalis can draw something else, can draw something new. And so we dedicate ourselves to these majalis not for some individual gain alone, not for social gain or simply just political gain, but we come to these majalis because we realize that these majalis are what connect us back to Allah. They never get old. They never get tiring. We will always be able to draw some inspiration from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt. And this is why the Quran itself attests that we have created the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad al-Mustafa, for you to become the highest exemplar for you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, there is the highest exemplar for you in the person of the Prophet. When we think about a human life, for those who have experienced a truly pious person, every single part of their life will teach you something else. A truly pious individual. And even when they're gone, if you really knew that person, you can draw inspiration from that life, even when they're not with you. So much so that you might at times think, if that person is an exemplar for you, you might think, what would that person do in this situation? He becomes your model. You try to think about, you learn about that person's life, that decision-making process of that person, and you would think that, okay, well, if I want to make a good decision, what would this person do? In Islam, we don't simply look at certain principles. We look at how those principles have been applied in a good life, in the life of the Prophet of Islam. How did he balance different principles? When did he implement and apply these principles? And when we look in particular at the life of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, the more we learn about them, the more beautiful their life becomes to us. Sometimes we have this image of, in particular, Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali. Sometimes people say that his figure was very polarizing. That Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, was a person who did not ever have any compromise. He did not give up on any principles. Maybe even he was so principle-oriented, such a principle-oriented person, that maybe it even harmed his political life. Sometimes people have this perception. But the more we learn about the life of Amirul Mu'mineen, the more we understand his words and the deeds of Amirul Mu'mineen, the more we see that he was actually one of the most nuanced people after Rasulullah. He understood exactly what the situation was and what it required. So just as an example, Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It is said that, it is recorded in Nahjul Balagha, in one of the many places, it is said that Amirul Mu'mineen made this declaration. He said, after I am gone, لا تقاتل الخوارج بعدي. Do not go and fight these Khawarij after I am gone. فليس من طلب الحق فأخطأه كمن طلب الباطل فأدركه. We want to see what the nuance and the insight of Amir al-Mu'mineen is. This is one example. We know that during the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, during the time that he was a Khalifa, he had to face one war after another, one battle after another. And one of the most difficult battles of Amir al-Mu'mineen was that battle that he had to face from people who were amongst his own companions, amongst his own army. It was people who defected and said that this treaty that you are making with Muawiyah is going against Allah's principles. People who thought that they were abiding by Allah's principles. And so they defected from the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And they said that La hukma illa lillah. There is no hukm except for Allah. You cannot decide to go on your own path. And so they separated themselves from Amir al-Mu'mineen, and they were called the Khawarij, people who rebelled against Imam Ali. But these people who rebelled, they were trying to seek the truth. On the other hand, you have a person like Muawiyah, where battle after battle, the battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen is faced with someone who is not seeking the truth. He is seeking power and glory. He's trying to erase that legacy of the Prophet. You think about the nuance and the insight of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, after I am gone, do not fight these Khawarij anymore. Don't think that the Khawarij is the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate enemy. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, these Khawarij are not like a person. These Khawarij, it's different for a person to try to seek the truth, and yet he errs. That person is different from a person who tries to go towards batil, and he succeeds. Don't equate these two people. The ultimate goal that they are trying to reach is different. One is seeking the truth, the other is seeking falsehood. And so be aware of these nuances. Understand your context. The more we look into the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the more we can draw inspiration. This is a fact. This is a reality. And it's just for us to realize that. This is in terms of inspiration. So every year when we come to the majalis of Imam Hussein, we have to pick something new for ourselves. We have to acquire either a deeper connection with Imam Hussein, we have to either acquire a deeper insight into the actions and the teachings of Imam Hussein, and then we have to apply those in our own lives, in the lives of our communities, and in the lives of, inshallah, our society. This is our task. Now, this is in terms of that inspiration. What about in terms of our hopes and the solutions that we put into practice? This as well we can draw from Karbala. Again, we said that Imam Hussein was trying to resolve the problems of his ummah. And so when we talk about Karbala, talk about the mission of Imam Hussein, sometimes we will mention that this is a political struggle. Imam Hussein saw that a person like Yazid cannot become the successor to that legacy of the Prophet. Because if he does, if he becomes that successor, then he would destroy the ummah from above, from the political realm, from that source of power. And so that's why Imam Hussein would recount time and time again that this khilafat, political power, cannot be in the hands of Ale Sufyan, the descendants of and the family of Abu Sufyan, because these were, from the time of the Prophet himself, the arch enemies of the Muslims until we get to Yazid and after. And so Imam Hussein's mission was, in one level, political. But we see that Imam Hussein's mission was not simply political, not solely and only political. It was also social. When a person from Banu Umayyah comes and says, Nahnu shajaratu Rasulillah, we are that tree of Rasulullah. We descend from that tree. And we are heirs of that tree. All of those lessons and teachings of Islam, we are those heirs. He makes this claim. But then there is a society that comes and accepts that claim. There's a society that has fallen so far away and forgotten the lessons of Rasulullah so much that they are willing to accept that claim. And beyond that, there are reports that tell us that in fact there were people who surrounded Muawiyah, who would urge Muawiyah to have the people of the Muslim Ummah give bay'ah to Yazid. And so a leader is always surrounded by a people. A people, it is said, deserve the leaders that they get. You can't have a corrupt political establishment without some defects in the society that they are leading. So they go in hand. And beyond that, talked about Imam Hussein's mission was political, but it wasn't simply political. It was social, but it wasn't simply social. It was also individual. There are individuals who make up that society. In fact, in one episode, it is recounted that one of these people of the land of Iraq came on Hajj. And it is said that he came to Abdullah ibn Umar, who was known as a scholar and a narrator of the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And it is said that he asked him, this person from Iraq asks Ibn Umar, the son of the second Khalifa, and he says, I have this stain on my clothing. I have this blood stain. It's on my clothing, it's on my ihram. And maybe I had killed a mosquito or a fly. Does this make my ihram batil? What's interesting is the response. Abdullah ibn Umar says, you are from Iraq? He asks this person, where are you from? He says, I am from Iraq, I'm from the people of Iraq. He says, you are the people who killed the grandson of the Prophet of Islam. And now you are asking me whether this blood stain on your ihram is going to make your Hajj batil? Think about the level of piety, the depths of evil that a person must reach for a person to not care about the blood that they spill of the grandson of the Prophet. What are the criteria? What's the basis for your decision making as a human being? On the individual level, on the social level, and on the political level. But beyond all of this, the Imam was saying, as a people, your criteria and your priorities should be your connection to Allah. That's where you should find your solutions. That's where you should find your problem and the illness that is besieging you, that you are facing. And so we, generations later, when we think about the problems that we are facing, sometimes we might fool ourselves on our personal lives. We might think that if I had this thing, I had this career or this job, I got into this school, or I lived in this place, then my life would be complete. I'd be able to achieve all of those things that I ever wanted. If I only had this amount of money, then I could, for example, share it with my community. Then I wouldn't have any care in the world. I would have reached that thing that I've always wanted. But then we see that when we reach that thing, then we are totally unsatisfied. Doesn't bring us that meaning that we were searching for. And even if we are able to fool ourselves and think that this is going to bring us meaning, then we simply have to compare our lives to the lives of people who sacrificed themselves for the Ahlul Bayt. For those people who are the utmost level of perfection of humankind. We think about our social problems, problems that we are faced with in our society. We think that if only this crisis was resolved, then we would be a good society. Alhamdulillah, we run away from one country into another, from one danger into another. And we think that, alhamdulillah, now we are safe. But we see that, unfortunately, and with heavy hearts, we see that even in this society, with all of the peace and the safety that we live in, we are still faced with difficulties as Muslims. Just the other day, I'm sure you all have heard, in America, in New Mexico, there were 4 Muslim men who were killed. Apparently because they were Muslim. The story is still coming out. Even in this society, we are faced with problems. So we can never run away from, nor think that our solution is simply on the social level, such that if this problem was resolved, then all of our problems would be resolved. And even on the political level, sometimes we fool ourselves. Alhamdulillah, it's not political season, but, or maybe it is. I don't follow the Canadian politics very closely. But we think that this candidate, if he came into power, then alhamdulillah, we would be a good people. Or if this candidate came into power, unfortunately, everything is lost, both in the hopes that we have and in our fears. We think that our solution is in our hands, and that's the ultimate problem. We think our solution is in our hands. It's in our minds, those things that come to our minds. This is the lesson that we can get from the story of Karbala, that whatever solution you have, whatever solution comes to your mind, on whichever level you might think of, that solution is always going to be incomplete. That is not your ultimate problem. Our ultimate problem is how far we have strayed from Allah. And that principle, it is the source for all of our other problems. That is where we would find our solution. Because our connection with Allah does not simply end on an individual level. I shouldn't think that just because I have fulfilled my wajibat and refrained from my muharramat, then I am a believing human being. I must care as a Muslim, as a mu'min, a follower of the Ahlul Bayt, about my society. I should care about the politics of my world. I should care that people in the farthest reaches of the world are oppressed to such an extent that bombs will be thrown upon their city simply for political gain. People and children will be killed. In these recent bombings, tens of children were killed simply because of whether it was political gain or whatever. There's not a care in the world. If we don't care as well, then we are fooling ourselves to think we are following the legacy of the Prophet. But The response is that I seek and I try my best. But ultimately, my hope is not in what I can do. My hope is in Allah. We were talking about these people that Allah mentions in the Quran. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيه اسمه. These people, they mention the name of Allah, not because they have hopes in what they do. ليجزيهم Allah أحسن ما عملوا. Because they have hopes in what Allah will recompense them with, will compensate them with. وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. And Allah will increase them from His own grace. That is our ultimate source of hope. When we think about our source of hope as mu'mineen, as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we think about that ultimate promise that Allah has made to humankind. Ja al-haq, Allah says in His Quran, Ja al-haq wa zahaq al-batil. Inna al-batila kana zahuqa. Truth will come and falsehood will dissipate. For indeed, falsehood is something that dissipates. That is our ultimate source of hope. And our connection to that hope is what continues our lives. It both tempers the bad in our lives and it increases our hope, such that whatever might come, whatever difficulty we might face, we always have that hope. And whatever good we might do, inshallah, you have politicians who will be able to further the goods of the Muslim community, the hopes of the Muslim community. But again, whatever politician might come, whatever good we might do in our society, it even tempers that good. We realize that there's something more we can do. There's something more we can hope for. There's something more we can aspire to. For indeed, Ja al-haq wa zahaq al-batil. At every level, in our individual lives or in the highest levels, there's always something more that we can do. So if we were to think that intidhar and waiting for that faraj that Allah has promised to us is something that makes a passive community, then we are wrong. It doesn't create a passive community. It's not a passive act. It is an orientation towards the promise and that hope of Allah. That all of our solutions are simply temporary. All of our solutions are going and moving us further and closer towards that promise of Allah. And so, we ask Allah, in Ziyarat Ashura, we have this line, O Allah, وَأَنْ يَرْزُقَنِي طَلَبَ الثَّأْرِ مَعَ الْإِمَامِ مَعَ إِمَامٍ هُدًى ظَاهِرٍ نَاطِقٍ بِالْحَقِّ مِنْكُمْ. O Allah, I ask you to give me the opportunity to ask and to seek the revenge of your blood, O Imam Hussein, at the hands of an Imam who is guided and who is present and who calls towards haqq from amongst you, O Ahlul Bayt. That's our ultimate goal. That's our ultimate hope. We don't hope in our own actions or in our own thoughts. We hope in the actions and the deeds and the promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this gives us an entryway. Sometimes we think that dua is that last thing that a person could do when they're utterly hopeless out of everything else that they could do. If a person, for example, is terminally ill and the doctors can't do anything for that person, we turn towards dua. We say that dua is this last hope that we have. It's only Allah that we can hope in. Or we say that, for example, I have done my best I've given my application for this job, for this school, or for whatever thing that I am applying for. Now I have to do dua. You see that in the words of the Ahlul Bayt, dua isn't the last thing that you do. It's the first thing that you start with. Ad-du'a tursul mu'min. It's the shield. According to the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, it's the shield of a mu'min. You don't pick your shield up after the battle has been lost. You pick your shield up in the beginning of the battle. You ready yourself to go out and venture into the world, whatever you might do. And we don't think about dua simply in terms of those biggest things that we want to achieve in our lives. We want the world to be recreated. We want that promise of Allah to occur. And so we do dua al-faraj. The highest aspiration that we have, we only do dua for that. Or maybe we do dua for our marhumeen or our maghfirah, for our hereafter. Sometimes we think that Allah's realm is only in the hereafter. It's only in forgiving our sins. According to our Imams, according to the Ahlul Bayt, dua is for every small and minor thing in your life, and as well for the great things. A person comes and asks Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, what should I do dua for? I do dua for the big things in my life. The Imam responds, do dua for the smallest things as well as those biggest things. لأن صاحب الصغائر هو صاحب الكبائر. Because the same person, the same being who is responsible for these small things is the same person who is responsible for those big things. At every point in our life, whatever action we do, it is Allah that is giving us that power to do it. It is Allah that is giving us that wisdom and that mind to be able to think about that solution. Even the smallest things, we turn towards Allah. So our ultimate goal is that closeness to Allah. And we begin our solution with Allah. We begin every practice with Allah, doing dua. Oh Allah, make this action of mine successful. Then we end with the dua. Oh Allah, further whatever might come from this. Further the effects of my actions so that it reaches that ultimate goal that I have. And we ask Allah sincerely. But ultimately we realize, we orient our du'as. We don't think about these sagha'ir as in contrast to those kaba'ir. We don't think about our own personal well-being as in contrast to that ultimate hope that we have. We realize that if we do dua for ourselves, for our well-being, we orient ourselves such that we do dua for our own well-being so that we can further the mission of Allah. We can become amongst those who give their lives and sacrifice themselves for Allah in whatever place or whatever context they might be in. I do dua for my parents, knowing that my parents and whatever thing and whatever person I have in my life is a blessing that Allah has given me. And my ultimate parents, people who guide me and who nurture me throughout my life, are the Ahlul Bayt themselves. Ultimate success and ultimate value that any society can benefit from comes with the fulfilling of Allah, when Allah fulfills His promise to humankind. When I ask Allah to recreate and to make and give me a good society, I ask Allah in terms of Allah promising that ultimate promise, fulfilling that ultimate promise that He has given us. Because we know that all of our social solutions are going to be limited. Our social problems are going to be resolved only when that final promise has been fulfilled. Our political problems are only going to be fulfilled when that final promise has been fulfilled. And so when we ask Allah to resolve this social problem, we ask Allah to resolve this political problem, we ask Allah to resolve this spiritual problem that we see ourselves and our communities facing, we ask Allah in terms of that ultimate solution. That ultimate solution. And so we ask Allah in the small things and in the big things in terms of a hierarchy. We should not be shamed or ashamed of Allah to ask for the small things, but we realize that it's getting us to that ultimate goal. This is the message of the Ahlul Bayt. It tempers both the bad in our life and it gives us a criteria for our good. We're never satisfied. As the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we're never satisfied with the solutions that we come up with. But we always know that there is Allah above us. Let us turn towards Karbala. You see that time and time again, after the events of Ashura, time and time again, this caravan of Imam Hussein was faced with difficulty. Their trial did not end in the plains of Karbala. One stage after another, it is said that Lady Zainab and the Ahlul Bayt were taunted by their enemies. It is said that the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, Shimr had ordered his soldiers to make the Ahlul Bayt cross by the battlefield so that those wounds would be renewed in the minds and in the hearts of the Ahlul Bayt. When Sukaina sees the body of her father, when Lady Zainab sees the body of her brother, that wound re-emerges. It is said that when Lady Zainab and the caravan reach Kufa, it is said that she is forced to face Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, her ultimate enemy, the person who was the cause for the killing of her brother. And this man continues to taunt her. And he says, "O Zainab, what do you see? How do you understand what Allah has done? How do you see this day?" Lady Zainab says, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." I do not see but beauty in the workings of Allah. And I know that it was not Allah who killed my brother. It was not Allah who killed my family and the companions of Imam Hussein, but it was the people of my time. I know where to lay the blame. It is not at Allah's footsteps. When she was taken to the lands of Sham, it is said that Lady Zainab had the courage and the strength to face a person like Yazid. When Yazid says the same words, "O Zainab, how do you see what has happened?" Lady Zainab has no complaints towards Allah. She says, "Wama wallahi ma taqaytu illallah." I am not afraid of anyone except for Allah. "Wala shakwaya illa lillah." And I have no complaint except to Allah. Lady Zainab knows the principles. Lady Zainab knows the cause of goodness and the place where she puts her hope. And it is said that when we speak about Sham, Sham was a place that was foreign to the Ahlul Bayt. They had not recognized and they did not know the Ahlul Bayt. And so when we look in the historical reports, it is said that when the Ahlul Bayt came into Sham, when the caravan entered upon the gates of Sham, they could hear the people celebrating that the enemies of Islam have been vanquished. The people of Sham were celebrating before the Ahlul Bayt and the caravan entered the city. It is said that the people of Sham would taunt the Ahlul Bayt as they were taken throughout the streets. They were foreign. They did not know who the Ahlul Bayt were. And so the Ahlul Bayt had to remind them of who they were. But the city of Kufa was different. It was only 20 years ago that Amirul Mu'mineen Imam Ali ruled this city. These people of Kufa knew the Ahlul Bayt. They knew Lady Zainab. They knew Imam Hussein. And yet they were the ones who perpetuated that and who perpetrated the killing of Imam Hussein. And so when Lady Zainab came to the city of Kufa and she saw these people of Kufa crying because they had heard the news, crying because they saw the caravan of Ahlul Bayt coming in shackles and being whipped by the army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, these small children being carried throughout the streets. And they see that the caravan sees that these people of Kufa are crying. Lady Zainab calls to them. There's a famous khutbah that Lady Zainab gives at the gates of the city of Kufa. And she says, "Oh, you Kufans, you cry now, but who do you think killed Hussein? You were the ones who killed Hussein. You were the ones who left his body on the desert plains. Are we not Muslims for you to leave our bodies on the desert without a burial shroud, without being buried? Are we not Muslims? Do we not deserve that dignity and the respect of Muslims?" It is said that these words of Lady Zainab rang throughout the city of Kufa. And Ubaydullah was unsure what this city would do. It is said that Lady Zainab's words were affecting the hearts of the Kufans. And so Ubaydullah was not sure what to do. And the message came to Ubaydullah, if you want Zainab to become quiet, then show her the head of Hussein upon the spear. It is said that as soon as Lady Zainab saw the head of Hussein, her brother, upon that spear, she heard the words that were being recited by Hussein. It is said that Lady Zainab became quiet. It is said that she recited these words, Ya hilalan lamma statamma. Oh, you new moon that I see in the sky. غاله خسفه فأبدى غاله خسفه فأبدى غروبا. Just as soon as you were about to be completed, you were covered and eclipsed, and the night fell upon us. Ya akhi, Fatima as-saghira kallimha. Oh, my brother, up atop that spear. Oh, my brother, speak to this Fatima Saghira. Speak to your Sukaina. فَقَدْ كَادَ قَلْبُهَا أَنْ يَدُوبَا. Because, oh my brother, it is as though this Fatima Saghira, this Sukaina, is about to give her life. Oh my brother, look upon her. Gaze upon her as a father does to his beloved daughter. Oh my Hussein, speak to her, for it is as though she is going to give her life. Her heart cannot stand this anymore. They are holding your head in front of her eyes, oh Hussein. And so it is said that in Sham, when they give this head of Imam Hussein to Sukaina, after those days of wailing and crying, finally Sukaina becomes calm. Finally, she reaches her beloved father, and so she becomes silent. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. مع تنفسين.
کربل کی کہانی جب کوئی بھی سنائے گا، دل والوں کی آنکھوں سے ایک دریا بہائے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، وہ قافلہ سرور کا جو شان سے نکلا تھا، وہ قافلہ سرور کا جو شان سے نکلا تھا، صغرا کو قبر کیا تھی نہ لوٹ کے آئے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، وہ قافلہ سرور کا جو شان سے نکلا تھا، وہ قافلہ سرور کا جو شان سے نکلا تھا، صغرا کو قبر کیا تھی نہ لوٹ کے آئے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا مگر اکبر، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا مگر اکبر، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا مگر اکبر، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا مگر، فرزند نبی تیری میت کو اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، پامال ہوا قاسم جب گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے، پامال ہوا قاسم جب گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے، پامال ہوا قاسم جب گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے پامال ہوا قاسم، جب گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے کس طرح چچا تیری میت کو اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، سیدانیوں کا پردہ اب کون بچائے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و سرور نے اٹھائے تھے سب ساتھیوں کے لاشیں، 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 شبیر تیرا لاشا اب کون اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا، زہرا زہرا پرسال و 72 کا،
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار، کیا ہوا کیوں اداس بیٹھا ہے تو عزادار ابن زہرا ہے، چل وہاں رب جہاں پہ ملتا ہے، چل جہاں پنج تن کا سایہ ہے، وہ سخی در کھلا ہی رہتا ہے، عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس، ان کی درگاہ سے سگاتے وفا ملتی ہیں، نام زینب پہ یہاں سب کو رضا ملتی ہیں، ظاہرو آؤ سکینہ کی دعا ملتی ہے، ظاہرو آؤ سکینہ کی دعا ملتی ہے، میرے سکے کے عزادار جیو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، ہاں یہیں باب ہوا ہے دعائے زہرا، یہ علی کا ہے سراپا تو کا چہرہ، ان کو کہتے ہیں حسین ابن علی کا پیارا، ان کو کہتے ہیں حسین ابن علی کا پیارا، پنجتن پاک کے پیارے سے کہو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، عباس علمدار عباس علمدار عباس علمدار، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو چلو، عباس کی درگاہ چلو، حاضری ان کی جب آتی ہے دیے جلتے ہیں، مصطفیٰ فاطمہ حسنین و علی آتے ہیں، بلکہ سب مادر عباس سے فرماتے ہیں، بلکہ سب مادر عباس سے فرماتے ہیں، او عباس کی تم نظر تو دو، چلو عباس کی درگاہ چلو، عباس علمدار، عباس علمدار، عباس علمدار، عباس علمدار، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو، چلو عباس کی درگاہ چلو، جس نے 9 لاکھ کے لشکر کا بڑھم توڑ دیا، اس پہ ایک مشق کے چدل نے ستم توڑ دیا، یا سکینہ کہا اور خاک پہ دم توڑ دیا، یا سکینہ کہا اور خاک پر دم توڑ دیا، مل کے سماعت میں عباس کرو، چلو عباس کی درگاہ چلو، عباس علمدار، عباس علمدار، عباس علمدار، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو، چلو عباس کی درگاہ چلو، چھوٹے حضرت کی بارگاہ چلو، چلو عباس کی درگاہ چلو، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین،
یا حسین 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 گونجتی فضائیں ہیں، ماتمی صدائیں ہیں، جس طرف نظر ڈالے قافلے ہزاروں ہیں، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، قافلوں کے سینوں میں، درد کے سفینوں میں، اشک خون کے دارے، دور تک علم سارے، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، یہ کروڑ ہاں انسان دیکھ تو علی کی جان تیرے غم میں ہے گریا، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، ان کی کربلا منزل ہے ہتھیلیوں پر، دل جھیل کر ہر ایک مشکل ایک صدا لبوں پر ہے، تیرا غم رہے آباد، اے حسین زندہ باد، 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 یا حسین 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 یا حسین، مولانا 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 یا حسین، زندہ باد یا حسین، زندہ باد یا حسین، زندہ باد یا حسین، زندہ باد یا حسین، عرض کرب زندہ باد یا حسین، زندہ باد عرض کربلا، مولانا یا حسین، 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 دین حق کا پاسباں، رسول حق کا ترجماں، حسینیت کا سائباں، محبتوں کا آشیاں، تو نبی کا زیب زین ہے، تو علی کا نور عین ہے، فاطمہ کے دل کا چین ہے، لا الہ یا حسین، دی حسین یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
سلام شاہ کربلا تو ارادہ خدا بڑا بلند حوصلہ نہیں حسین دوسرا کبھی کہیں نہ تیرا سر جھکا بلند تھا بلند یہ سر رہا حسین عزتوں کا بادشاہ مرحبا یا حسین چھا گیا یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین
زندہ باد
یا حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین
پکار اہل قافلہ حسین نے جو یہ کہا سفر ہے اب یہ موت کا ہر ایک رفیق بول اٹھا نہیں ہے کوئی موت کا خطر حسین جب ہمارا ہم سفر اجل ملائے ہم سے کیا نظر رہنما یا حسین پیشوا یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین
زندہ باد یا
حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین
ظلمتوں سے جنگ کی بدعتوں سے جنگ کی نفرتوں سے جنگ کی منافقوں سے جنگ کی تو نظام انقلاب ہے تو پیام انقلاب ہے تو امام انقلاب ہے انقلاب یا حسین کامیاب یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین
زندہ باد یا
حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین
وطن سے اپنے دور تھا تو مرد بے قصور تھا غموں سے چور چور تھا مگر وہ کیا شعور تھا ستم اٹھا کے ہوش میں رہا نحیف ہو کے جوش میں رہا لہو سے سرخ پوش میں رہا جوش کیا یا حسین ہوش کیا یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد
یا حسین
زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین
وہ سارا گھر لوٹا گیا وہ خون میں نہا گیا سنا پہ سر بھی آ گیا مگر وہ دین بچا گیا گواہی دے رہی ہے کربلا حسین کامیاب ہو گیا یزید کا نشان بھی نہ رہا سورما یا حسین ہر جگہ یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد
یا حسین
زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا
حسین
لرز رہی تھی کربلا تڑپ رہے تھے انبیاء جو سجدہ آخری کیا نبھا کے وعدہ وفا نہ زین نہ زمین پر رہا گواہ ہے دعائے نائیا تڑپ رہے ہیں حجت خدا السلام یا حسین یا امام یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین
زندہ باد
یا حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین
مولانا یا حسین
رائنت نان ازا حسین کا ہے معجزہ جو ان کے در پہ آ گیا مثال حر سنور گیا پکارتی ہے سب کو کربلا حسین کا ہے در کھلا ہوا فقیر کو کرے جو بادشاہ رب تیرا یا حسین سر تیرا یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد یا حسین زندہ باد عرض کربلا مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین مولانا یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
حسین الغریب حسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین دہائی دہائی یہ کیسی تباہی بہایا ہے کس نے یہ خون محمد قیامت کے دائی کس نے الہی جوانوں بزرگوں کو مارا گیا ہے شہیدوں میں شامل ہے ننھا سپاہی حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین
حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین شہید الشہید الشہید الحسین
کیا جشن برپا یہ اہل ہوس نے شہیدوں کے لاشوں پہ ڈنکے بجائے جلا ڈالا آل محمد کے خیمے سکینہ کے منہ پر تماچے ہے مارے جو بیمار تھا اس کا بستر نہ چھوڑا نبی زادیوں پر بھی درے چلائے حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین اٹھی اپنے مرکز سے بنت محمد شیعہ سب کے شادر میں چہرہ چھپا کر گئی کربلا میں تو اس نے یہ دیکھا ہے بوسیدہ کرتے میں ایک لاش بے سر بدن سارا تیروں سے چھنی پڑا ہے لہو میں ہے ڈوبا ہوا سارا پے کر حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین
الشہید الشہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین
حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین
حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین حسين الشهيد الشهيد الحسين حسين الغريب الغريب الحسين حسين الشهيد الشهيد الحسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا مغيث الشياة والذوار في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك يا عنيس النفوس. السلام عليك أيها المدفون بأرض توس. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان والشيطان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Please recite 5 times أما يجيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد.